Quality Assured Films.
Welcome back to Quality Assured Films. I'm John. My pronouns are he and him.
And I'm Mike, and my pronouns are also he and him.
And welcome to another weekly episode. Mike, I almost said what year is it? But what what week is it? Because I'm always, I have no idea.
It is the week of June 1st. It is Pride Month. Happy Pride Month.
Yes, and the weather is getting warmer depending on where you are, which means people are being stupider with the facial masks and whatnot, but that's a whole another story. What do we got going on?
Yeah, so normally we would do some QA films, housekeeping, and then we would talk about some entertainment news. This week, I think, would be better to just talk about some realness in the news first.
Yep.
And then if we have time, maybe talk about some other stuff later. But we'll talk about some more real stuff.
Makes sense. Let's do it.
So, first off, I want to say justice for George Floyd. There are many other names. There are too many names to list here, which is really sad and terrible. But a few other names that I want to list out from the last week. People of color that have lost their lives either to, hate crimes or police violence, being murdered by the police. Ahmaud Arbrey, Breonna Taylor, a black trans man, Tony McDade. Those all have GoFundMes associated from their families to help pay for funeral costs and other needs of those families in their time of mourning. So I encourage you to, we'll include the links as well in the description, but I encourage you to seek out those and donate if you can.
Definitely.
A couple other places to donate. There's a homeless black trans women fund. As part of the conversation, I also want to make sure that we don't leave out black disabled lives. So kind of transitioning into the real point here is that Black Lives Matter. It needs to be said. We need to say it in no uncertain terms.
Right.
I've heard so many people say all lives matter, and I've had to have that conversation with them, which is difficult and uncomfortable, but necessary.
I know, and it's difficult. Yeah, well, you said difficult. That's not what this is about. Of course, all lives matter. I mean, right now we're having the conversation with our listeners. We know that all lives matter. If it were equal, we wouldn't be sitting here saying Black Lives Matter. So
some other things that I want to say about the stances that I'm taking are to defund and abolish the police and prisons. These two bodies, I guess, are the perpetrators of systemic racism and violence, and they can't be reformed because reform implies that they are basically good and they should be kept around, and the statistics show that is unfortunately not true. So the stance I'm taking on those are to defund and abolish them.
Now, my only question, and this is most likely a question other people would have, what would we put in place of it? Because I 100% agree with you. This is insane that it's gone on this long. You were even telling me, too, that the whole creation of the police force, the origination of it was for the protection of rich white people. So, of course, from the start, it was fucked.
Yeah.
But what I guess the question maybe some people might have is what would we put in place of it for the murderers, for the true people that suck? Okay.
I don't have all the answers right now. I mean, I can say that the money, the trillions of dollars that would go to those things could be going into our communities. It could be providing services to underprivileged people, education, healthcare, access to healthy food. All of these things we know, housing, amenities.
Yep.
All of these things we know, the lack thereof is what leads to crime and violence. So the first thing would be funding those basic needs for everyone. Universal income. All of those things would be suggestions to fix the actual problems, to get people's needs met. As far as what we would do about keeping our communities safe, I think basically there will be community efforts where your neighbors, would need to all come together and figure that out on a community level. I'm not as educated on that right now to have a perfect answer for that. Just being honest, I need to do more reading on that. The solutions have been proposed. I know that much. A lot of the resources that we'll be including in the description, one of them will be a thread of resources about what that world looks like and what the proposals are for the answer to that question. So I'm going to be learning right along with my fellow white people who need to know the answer to that question. Kind of along those lines, it's really past time, but especially time to pick a side about being an anti-fascist.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Everyone that made fun of me for being really upset after the 2016 election, this is what I was so worried about. The current administration is trying to classify people who identify as anti-fascist as terrorists in order to strip them of their rights and perpetrate violence against them. The administration is deploying the police and the military in order to enact violence on people who are identifying as anti-fascist. So Antifa is not an organization. Antifa is an abbreviation of the words anti-fascist. If that doesn't make it clear for you, I don't know what else will.
Yeah, that is crazy. That obviously, some people don't know that, and they hear Antifa, and it's like Antifa, oh, ISIS, oh, all these other fucking places, especially when you have dipshit orange man fucking, like you said, classifying it as terrorism. One thing I want to point out is that there are motherfuckers of the white supremacy and of other factions of that are taking advantage of this moment, and they are going into places and they're causing more shit, whether it's destruction to people of color's businesses or homes or areas, and trying to, I guess vilify might be the right word, this movement. And that's fucking scary. I saw some videos of people literally pulling fucking bricks away from white kids that were showing up on scene just to do that, just to start trouble, just to fucking do the opposite of what this is all about.
Yeah, I mean, I've definitely had those conversations with people in my life as well, where the reaction is to say, well, I don't like the looting, I don't like the property damage and stuff like that. And I can understand where that sentiment comes from. It's scary, obviously. We don't want to see things destroyed. I think it's kind of a complicated topic because I could see the argument of like, well, you might have Black, Indigenous, people of color owning small businesses in your community, and those are being destroyed. And obviously, we don't really want to see that. And yes, there have been some cases where white supremacists have tried to infiltrate the protests in order to undermine their credibility. And we've seen politicians latch on to that explanation and try to use that as an explanation to undermine the protest at large.
Right.
And what I think we need to do is understand that the system that we're participating in on a daily basis I mean, essentially capitalism, but in our kind of day-to-day lives as well, especially as white people, is a system of violence that has been built to exploit people. And whatever storefronts we might be seeing damaged, or whatever property damage or looting that we might see, pales in comparison to the violence that we see enacted on the poor, on trans people, on indigenous people, on black people, on people living with disabilities, on people living with a mental illness. Uh, these people are having violence done to them and fighting for their lives every day. It's just not as visible because they're not out on the street in the news.
Right, right.
And so the people who might be saying, well, the protests should be peaceful. Well, the protesters tried being peaceful. There's no right way to protest because they don't want you protesting, period. So there's always a moving goalpost about the right way that people should be protesting, because it's not really the protest, or it's not the way that people are protesting that they think is the problem. It's the fact that they're protesting. It's the fact that people are speaking up against the status quo, against the conditions that they have been put in against their will. And the majority of business owners that I've seen have been in solidarity and hospitality with the protesters. You can replace property. The storefronts can be fixed. Target's gonna be fine.
Yeah.
Merchandise can be replaced. Most of these places have insurance that will cover any kind of damage. People in their communities will help out. You don't need to be weeping for a multi-trillion-dollar bank franchise. What we can't replace are lives, lives of the people who the state has enacted violence upon and murdered, whether that be through police violence in the street or through unjust laws and not protecting people in the justice system. So that's kind of my response to that. I think that's kind of a bad faith talking point, but I know we're going to encounter that as we talk to our friends and family about these things. So I encourage you to, I mean, I'm still reading up on how to open my mind to those issues, which I might not see right in front of my face every day, but that just pale, they put whatever justified rage and is happening during a protest.
I heard a very amazing quote on NPR. They were interviewing one of the protesters, and she said, "Black people built this country, and we will burn it down if we need to." And I just thought that was so powerful because, yeah, like everything you just said.
You've probably heard the song and the quote of "The revolution will not be televised."
Yep.
I think Gil Scott-Heron was the artist who created that song. I saw an interview with him from the 90s where people were asking him, the interviewer was asking him to explain the idea, what was the meaning of that? Because if you take it very literally, like, yeah, of course it would be. His response was that the intention behind those words, "the revolution will not be televised," was, I'm paraphrasing, of course, was that before you make the decision to go out into the street and demand change, you have to change your mind. And changing your way of thinking internally is something that no one will ever see outwardly. That was the intention behind those lyrics, and I thought that was pretty profound, more than I had ever thought about that song, certainly.
Yeah, wow. I did not know that. That's amazing.
You talking about that quote made me think of that other one. So what can you do?
Great question. There's many things you can do as a person that's white. A big thing, and this is kind of hard to do, and I know you've been doing it a lot lately. I've been trying it too, is speaking up when you're in social situations. I mean, obviously we're not in many social situations right now, but it could be anything over the phone, on a conference call, whatever, in a meeting, and somebody makes a comment that you know is wrong, and yeah, okay, maybe they're kidding around. No, you speak up and you tell them how that's not right, and you might be met with some anger. You might be met with oh, get all right, you liberal, or whatever dumb statement they may have, but you don't back down. That's one thing you can do, and again, takes little to no energy from you, other than of course getting over that small hurdle in the grand scheme of things of what people might think when you say it.
Totally agree. Having those, they're going to be uncomfortable. They're going to be difficult conversations to have with your friends and family, but they are necessary. Otherwise, this continues.
Right.
Similarly, it's not enough to quote unquote not be racist. We have to be anti-racist, and it's time to identify as those things. So we need to say in no uncertain terms that we are anti-racist, and we have to take anti-racist actions and educate ourselves about what those are. There are a ton of resources out there. We're going to link some of them in the description of the video. But a lot of Black and Indigenous people of color have already done the work of laying out these resources for us. So really, the least we could do is read up on them and get on board with them. Call your township and county officials. Call your federal officials. They need to hear from you. Leave them a message. Send them. I mean, there are scripts out there that you don't have to make up something on the spot, but you do want to personalize them. So do that as well. But the resources are really out there as far as what being an anti-racist means and what actions you can take. A simple one is just using your white privilege to help out and lift up the voices of Black and Indigenous people of color as much as you can. You know, whether that be retweeting, whether that be, you know, going out to the protest, putting yourself between them and harm's way.
Mm-hmm.
If you can't do that, then open your wallet and donate. If you can't do that, then share those links when you come across them so that others who maybe have the means can see that more easily and donate themselves.
You just listed a bunch of very easy things to do. I mean, the money thing, like you said, if you can't, the sharing simply, and like you said at the start of that, the whole I'm not racist. No, I love people. I love everybody. That's not enough anymore. Like you said, it's time for action. And what we're seeing in the streets and what we're seeing day over day here everywhere, I'm excited. I mean, it sucks that it came at such a horrible cost, but I'm excited because this feels finally like something's changing. So I'm willing to do more, and I know you are, and hopefully the people that are watching this are.
Definitely, we need you. Speaking of which, if you are able, one of the best things you can do is going out to join the protests. If you do so, be safe and smart. We're going to link some tips in the description for what to do if you plan on doing that. But in general, you don't want to discuss your plans publicly. You want to cover your face. You want to leave your smartphone at home if you can. If you can't do that, then we have at least one article on how to keep your data as safe as you possibly can with your smartphone. You want to wear protective clothing that doesn't stand out. If people are trying to narc and point you out, the less identifiable clothes that you're wearing, the better.
Some people may hear this and think to themselves, why Why would I have to worry about that? I'm simply going to show my support. I'm standing up with people of color. It matters. I mean, believe it or not, and this is not the fucking conspiracy theory channel, but there are these things are tracked. People are tracked, and then that can in turn be used against you. And just read the article, take some of the tips. Obviously the cell phone thing might be a little difficult. If you have the money, you buy, like, I don't know if you said this, but you buy like a little burner phone, if you will, like Jack Bauer. That's a dated reference, and you break it when you're done. But no, seriously, just cover yourself.
Unfortunately, the amount of third parties that are collecting our data and selling it are vast and for the most part unregulated.
Yep.
So what data is being collected and what's being done with it and who it's being sold to, namely the police and the FBI, all your location data, your phone's unique ID tag, all these things are being linked back to you. Your phone is snitching on you.
Yeah.
And so when you go to the protest and when the president says that he's sending his enforcers out after the people who are there, it becomes important to protect your anonymity. There's facial recognition software. Your fellow protesters might be taking pictures. The press might be taking pictures, and those pictures are going to be shared. And when those things get shared, people will bend over backwards to pick out clear faces and voices and retaliate against those people. And so that is why it's very important to protect your data and your identity when you go out to join the protest. I'm not telling you this to dissuade you from going.
Right.
If you can go, you should go. But if you go, you need to know how to protect these things and be safe when you do. Some other suggestions would be, if you're wearing protective clothing, which you should be, write important numbers on your arms. If you are, if somebody is getting arrested, try to get their name and birth date from them if you can, if you're able, so that something we'll link to in a second is that allies can try to track that person and make sure that they're okay.
Oh, okay. That makes sense. Yeah.
And that ties into my next point, which would be to donate to bail funds. We're going to link to a list of bail funds. There's a Act Blue put together a list of many from across a bunch of different states. So you can make one donation, but split it among many different bail funds. Then you can kind of edit it manually if you want to give different amounts to different particular funds. That also kind of ties back into like this country's really fucked up cash bail system. In this context, you can donate to try to help any protesters who have been arrested. In a more general context, that is part of something you can do to help free people who are being unjustly held on insurmountable cash bail. A lot of bail funds, thankfully, so many people have donated that they are also directing people to donate to other places. For example, I've seen it recommended to donate to mutual funds. So like there might be a community who has organized a food bank and they can use that money to buy groceries. There are GoFundMe pages, Venmo, Cash App, PayPal for individuals or families that need help. So keep your eyes out for those as they go through your timeline on your social media. We're going to put the links to some bail funds and mutual funds in the description, but just saying, as you go through your social media, keep your eye out. And when you see those, especially individuals, organizers that are out there on the ground who might need gas masks, who might need to buy goggles, who might need to buy water for people, those people really need help, and your direct donation of cash right to these individuals can help immensely.
That's great. Thank you, Mike.
So we're still kind of on the topic of like what actions can you do. As a kind of a summary, we talked about, identifying as an anti-racist, identifying as an anti-fascist. Call your township and county officials, call your federal officials, have these uncomfortable conversations with your friends and family. Take some of the burden slightly. If we can do anything, take a little bit of the burden off of our Black and Indigenous people of color, our friends of color, for having those conversations and educating ourselves, doing the reading, lift up their voices, retweet them, share them, and donate. We talked about donating. We talked about being smart and staying safe, going to protest. What are some other things that we can do to take action?
Yeah, there's a ton of things we can do. I mean, we can sign petitions, which some people may not think that matters, but when you get that number of people signing something, it does matter.
Yeah, so for example, we're going to have a link to the Black Lives Matter page, and there are a list of places to donate, but there are also lists of petitions that you can sign and add your voice and name to those petitions. One of which is you'll see it's called Junk Terror Bill, and that was recently it's a piece of legislation that the government in the Philippines is trying to pass to broaden the expansion of terrorism so that they can prosecute their citizens and persecute them. And as you know, the establishment there has already enacted a lot of violence against the population there. So it's really important that we add our voices to help out our international friends as well.
Another thing we can do as well is, like you were saying with educating ourselves, we can also entertain ourselves by watching TVs and movies that are anti-racist. I know we're going to put in the bio here, I'm sorry, in the description below, a link to, is it Victoria Alexander? I think you were telling me about?
Yes.
And she has a plethora of film, TV shows. Does she have books too, or is that somebody else?
Books too.
These things can help you be a better person. It can sometimes feel hopeless, but imagine the other people on the other side that are fucking feeling this for hundreds of years.
Yeah, exactly.
What else you got?
We can move into just a little bit of QA Films housekeeping. Our Decade in Review series for the 2010s is all done. We might have talked about that last time, but I'm bringing it up again just because it's the last major thing that the non-weekly episodes that we have out there.
Right. Yep, it's wrapped. Working on the 2020 movies right now that we already shot. Hopefully should have, well, I mean, we'll have a bunch of those out this month. June. So look forward to those.
Oh, yeah. And just a quick reminder about the Google Doc, the Excel sheet that we have of all our movies and TV shows that we've talked about on our show, anime, YouTube, you name it.
Yep.
And you can find the link to that list in the description also.
Nice. How about liking and subscribing our QA Films YouTube channel, which has been around for 6 fucking years? But no, seriously, we have a whole bunch of stuff. You can even go back to our old episodes before we had, better production value, and you can see the slow, I almost said decline, but the slow rise, the evolution of John and Mike.
Similarly, leave a comment back there if you go back that far. We've gotten some more comments over the last few weeks. I think as a result of us asking for people to do that. Thank you to those of you who have done so.
It's awesome. Yeah.
You can also send us an email at qualityassuredfilms@gmail.com.
Someone, please.
Tell us, what I'd really like to hear is if you've watched any movies or TV or YouTube or anime that we have recommended and what you thought of them.
Yeah.
we obviously do this because we're compelled to. but it would be nice to hear back. Ultimately, the reason that we wanted part of the reason that we set our show up in the format that it is so that we can there's a lot of crap out there, and so hopefully we're sifting through some of that and bubbling up the ones that are worth your time. So it would be nice to hear every once in a while, if you like something that we said was worth your time, let us know.
Yeah, we watch it so you don't have to. Oh, don't forget, we have our Instagram, QA_films. We try to put some things on there every now and then, and teases for the new episodes or whatever. And am I missing anything?
We also have Facebook, which is at qualityassuredfilms.
Yes.
So, in summary, donate.
Yes.
If you can't donate, share the link. Educate yourself, as we will be.
Yep.
And most importantly, take action. Don't lose this momentum. Don't lose this anger. Don't lose this sense of injustice. We have to use it to make a change.
Right. Just like you hear people talking about how when the COVID-19 pandemic is over, we're not going to be able to go back to normal. We're not going to go back to normal since this happened.
Speaking of COVID-19, it ain't over, folks. Nope. For some reason, the last couple of weeks, everyone's been acting like it's over. It ain't over.
I know, it's scary, man. It's scary.
And it's easy to kind of think, well, I'm okay. I'm personally okay. Thank God the people that are in my immediate life are okay. But we all know somebody who's been affected at this point.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And there are over 100,000 deaths in our country at this point, just at the time of this recording. And I don't see that going down. People are opening businesses back up now.
Yeah. Yeah. Restaurants, theater. Well, I don't know. Not around us, movie theaters yet, but yeah. I can't imagine what this is going to do. And as I mentioned, I think earlier at the beginning of this, it's getting warmer out where we are. So immediately it's like, come on, folks, the outside patio's open. Don't worry about your masks. Trump says you don't need to, so fucking what?
Yeah, you have to wear a mask. You have to. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
It's not just about you. It's not just about your safety. Wearing the mask protects you and the other people around you. So you have to wear it. And obviously keep washing your hands and keep the distance when possible.
Yes. And all the essential workers, my sister Cassandra, day in and day out, helping these patients, helping people, healthcare workers, everyone. We continue to thank you, because without you, I mean, imagine what this would be like. Holy shit. I don't even want to. So thank you.
Yes. And you deserve to be paid accordingly.
Seriously.
Yeah. I mean, really, even if you're not an essential worker, you deserve to be paid. This is a really bad time to be out of work. So, essential workers, healthcare workers, volunteers, those who are out of work, you all deserve to be paid, frankly. And if you're going to a protest, just remember, check resources, do a little research before you go out. Don't talk about your plans. We're going to put some links that you can read, but do your own research also. Just be careful, stay safe, protect your data, protect your identity, and if you're white, use your white privilege, use your power that you have as a person that has white privilege to either stand in front of or beside the Black and Indigenous people of color that you're protesting with. Got to use the powers for good.
Right.
I think that's it. I think that's a weekly episode.
I think you're right.
Okay. With all that said, I'm Mike.
And I'm John.
And this is
Quality
Quality Assured
Films.
Films. Take care.
See you later.